I think not having AI written reviews is really important because as AI becomes more and more prevalent, original content is going to be king, and content is just going to be commoditized. It's going to be regurgitated, and in oversaturated markets that we have today in the tech industry, that's exactly what you don't want.
I'm Jonathan Gandalf, and welcome to the Content Cocktail Hour, powered by Audience Plus. Our mission is to shake out the deepest secrets of B2B marketing professionals and stir up fresh conversation, all to help you connect your brand with the right audience at the right time. Let's raise a glass. Welcome back to the Content Cocktail Hour. Jonathan here, the host of today's episode. I am thrilled to be joined by the CMO of TrustRadius, Allyson Havener. We're going to jump into all things reviews, what AI is doing in the space. We're going to talk about data-driven content. And then lastly, I'm excited to get her perspective from the CMO seat on all things content. So we're going to try to cover all of that in today's episode. We'll see how far we get because those are some bigger topics. But Allyson, thank you so much for joining us. And in your own words, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at TrustRadius.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jonathan. Really excited to be here. As you mentioned, I'm the CMO at TrustRadius. So for those of you that don't know TrustRadius, we're a buyer intelligence platform. So millions of buyers come to TrustRadius. They're looking at customer reviews, product information, trying to make the most confident technology decision that they can. And we also work with vendors to connect with those buyers. So my role at TrustRadius is to essentially nurture those buyers, make sure that we're giving them the content that they need to make that decision and feel confident about it. And then obviously work with the vendors to make sure that they're putting their best foot forward and making sure that they're giving buyers what they want, which is a ton of product information up front, a ton of reviews, so they don't have to talk to a salesperson.
That's fair. I don't typically ask a follow-up question here, but I'm so curious because TrustRadius has a little bit of the same two-sided business that we have. In your role, how much of your time is dedicated to the vendor solution product versus the buyer solution product? Is it both or is it one or the other?
So it's definitely both, and it kind of ebbs and flows, to be completely honest. You know, when you think about a publisher, you monetize your audience. And so you need to make sure that, one, you're bringing people to TrustRadius. We have really high quality standards when it comes to the content that we put on our site, regardless if that's pricing or a review, et cetera. So we put a lot of emphasis on the moderation of content that's on our site. So we know that we attract, really high quality in-market buyers that are looking to make a purchase within the next 3 to 6 months. Our audience kind of skews more to mid-market and enterprise because of just how in-depth the reviews are. They average 400 words. And so we put a lot of emphasis on that, and that all kind of falls into my organization. So my organization is making sure our site is up to date, that all the reviews are actually quality, they're not fraudulent, they're not written by AI. We actually have the lowest amount, only about 10% have gotten through kind of our AI trackers, which is for the industry, that's really, really low. We had a third party do a study on that. And so we have a very rigorous moderation process. So that takes up a lot of time and effort. But then on the other side of the house, we need to make sure that we're building our brand. We're a brand that people want to align their careers to. They want to align themselves to. And we really want to be this brand that bridges the gap between the buyer and the vendor, and where it's just mutually beneficial. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be selling to anybody that isn't right for your product, because you're just selling churn at that point. Yeah. So we're on this mission to make sure that buyers are making confident technology decisions and that vendors are really attracting their best customers.
That's fascinating. Very complex, I think, and just there's a lot going on there. So kudos to you and the team for making the most of it all. Well, this is the Content Cocktail Hour, Allyson. We do always like to ask all of our guests, what are you enjoying drinking nowadays?
Oh, you can find me at the local watering holes here in San Francisco in Russian Hill, drinking slightly dirty martini, no vermouth, and hanging out. So that's usually what I'm drinking. Or if it's a nice day, maybe some rosé.
I love it. Big fan of both those options. So we'll see if anybody runs into you at the local watering hole there in San Francisco. So you mentioned that quality. You guys just released a Building Buyer Trust quality review report. Right off the bat, the statistic that I almost had to like reread to make sure I was making sense of it and understanding it properly. But it was TrustRadius only publishes like 51% or 52% of the reviews that actually get posted on TrustRadius because of that incredibly high barrier for quality, which is like fascinating to me. I think we live in this world where everybody champions quantity, and you all have literally cut your quantity in half to make sure that you can champion the quality that you mentioned previously. I'd love to just hear about maybe that process of how you guys define quality. And then I'm also so curious, like, do you all wrestle with kind of philosophically, like, hey, we could double our numbers overnight if we really wanted, right? Like, I'd be so curious to hear if there's like that kind of philosophical give and take within the org.
I'll start with the philosophical piece because that's really where it starts. I was actually just talking with our CRO, and everything we do starts from like, we have to be philosophically aligned on how we want to run this business and how we want to run our go-to-market, like everything. And then from there, your strategy, your execution layers all stem from that. But if you're not philosophically aligned on how to run your business or your go-to-market or your product team or whatever it may be, it makes everything much harder and less successful. And so where we really, from an executive standpoint, in a company culture and really where we have built our roots is in quality. And so it was really important to us not to play the volume game, because at the end of the day, we knew that people read 3-star reviews. They don't read 5-star reviews. People are looking for truth. They're looking for actual helpful content, and nothing's 5 stars. Nothing's perfect. And so I think that was really important. And so we've done a lot of education around this to help vendors understand it's about the content and it's about the people that you get to review you. So to our point earlier was around like your best customers should be getting your next best customers. And so getting your whole gambit of personas and verticals to leave you these really in-depth reviews, you actually don't need thousands and thousands of reviews, right? You just need recent reviews from people that you essentially want buying your product, because I'm going to buy a product of somebody that is my role at a similar size company, right? And so we really focus on that strategy with our customers, where we're like, get the reviews and get them from all kinds. Don't just go to your NPS score that's like a 5 or whatever the scale is, because you're cherry picking and people are going to read right through that and you're not going to build that trust. And I think where we're coming to this age of kind of skepticism and people are so risk adverse because we have so much pressure to make the right decisions. And so your job is to make sure that you're building that trust. And if you have all 5-star reviews and, they're all like these one-liners that aren't actually really helpful, that's not what you're doing. So we've really leaned into the quality, the content, and really educating vendors on how to build that trust and how to meet those buyers' expectations when they're doing that research process.
I mean, so much respect for that. I'm familiar with other review sites where it is, you get the one-liner and it's like, okay, this is part of like, they were incentivized, like this was bought, right? And it's like, you're right. We can see right through that. I just think it's so obvious. And I love the psychology of, you're exactly right. Like, people don't read the 5-star reviews. They don't read the 1-star reviews. It's always kind of that middle ground where it's a more nuanced kind of review of both the good and the bad. Really fascinating and really valuable work you all are doing there. So then the obvious maybe question here, and kudos to us for getting almost 10 minutes into an episode and not mentioning AI until now, but AI obviously is playing a role in the reviews space. You mentioned only 10% of the TrustRadius reviews are kind of getting through that AI filter. I assume there's probably been some whiplash in the review space of the rise of generative AI and like what to do with it. How is TrustRadius being the industry leader in making sure that the reviews aren't just all AI generated?
It's kind of multifaceted when it comes to AI and reviews. I think not having AI written reviews is really important, because as AI becomes more and more prevalent, original content is going to be king, and content is just going to be commoditized. It's going to be regurgitated, and in oversaturated markets that we have today in the tech industry, that's exactly what you don't want. You don't want to start sounding like your competitors. You don't want to start to sound like everybody else. And so original content is going to be so important, and make that investment now, especially in customer voice. I truly, truly believe in customer voice, because it's the last thing that your competition can't replicate. They can copy your messaging on your website. They can copy your website. They can copy your product, but they can't copy your customer voice. And so invest in that now and how you're aggregating it. Reviews are one way to do that at scale, but there's, marketers are very creative about getting customer voice and how that turns into content and how that gets distributed. And so that's kind of like one way to think about it. The other way to think about AI is the data that it's ingesting for those models to then, okay, people are using it for search or trying to get these answers, but what's going into that, right? If they start looking up what are the 5 best marketing automation platforms, or what are the 5 best BI tools, or whatever, what are they using? And right now we don't have like a lot of that instrumentation to understand how those models are working. If you look on LinkedIn right now, there's a lot of guessing going on. But I think there's one thing that I was looking at some research that was just done, and it was about how ranking still from an SEO perspective, that the highest ranked content is like what the models are using to kind of generate those answers. And if you look typically at reviews, they rank really high because of how keyword rich the content is, long tail keywords, right? A lot of our customers take a lot of the quotes from the reviews and put it on their website because it helps them from an SEO perspective. So you still have to invest in the content that's like on the internet, if you will, and making sure that that's right when people are changing their search behavior. And we're actually releasing our B2B buying disconnect report that we do annually. It'll be our 9th year releasing it. And we're talking about brand discoverability and how search behavior has changed and what you need to do around that. So while I'll have some more content around this, maybe we have to do a follow-up, but I think the principle still remains is like quality in, quality out, right? It's a math equation. So when you're thinking about the way people search and how you're going to be discovered, what's the type of content that you want to be used in those models? And review content is really high on that list, given how well it ranks already from an SEO perspective.
Fascinating. I think in the world of AI, you mentioned review content's one of the things that can't be replicated by AI. One of the other things, I want to shift gears into the TrustRadius kind of content strategy, because I think this is a great segue. One of the other things that AI can't replicate right now is proprietary data, right? And you mentioned the buyer disconnect report. We will have a follow-up episode about that. But TrustRadius, you all in the team do such a great job of sharing data, like your own proprietary data that helps buyers, helps sellers, like make better decisions, make informed decisions. Tell us a little bit about the process that goes into creating really rich, high-quality, data-driven content at TrustRadius.
So it starts with our amazing research team. So I'm very, very lucky that we have this in-house research team. They also help from again, maintaining our site, thinking about the taxonomy of our site, making sure we're getting the right products on there, they're up to date, all of that. They have a really big job. They also help a lot of our customers will aggregate the reviews. I talked about the quote use case, but they'll also take the reviews and they're so robust that they can make customer stories and market reports and competitive takeout pages and, all of that kind of stuff. And so it really starts with, okay, we look at what's going on in the market, what's interesting when it comes to selling software, which kind of putting my CMO hat on and thinking about, okay, how do we build our brand and our authority in the space and doing that in a really authentic way? And it's like, well, we're sitting on all of this data of how people are researching products. And so a big part of our strategy in terms of thought leadership is okay, let's find these macro trends that are happening in the B2B tech landscape, and let's research it and write about it and have a point of view and put that into market. And so that's really kind of, if you boil down the strategy, that's what the strategy is. Then we're like, okay, great. What are these macro trends? Okay. So when I first started at TrustRadius about 3 years ago, it was all about this kind of self-serve buyer that they were doing all of this. So 3 years ago, it was like, they're doing all this research without you, and they don't want to talk to a salesperson. They don't want everything safeguarded by a salesperson. Put all this important product information up front. Give them pricing, give them the interactive demo, give them the reviews, et cetera. And then we kind of shifted, we're like, great, now you've done all this, we saw this trend around brand, and we swung the pendulum so far on performance marketing that people were starting to see diminishing returns on the performance marketing. And it's like, because you didn't invest in your brand, nobody knows who you are. It doesn't matter if you did X, Y, and Z to get them to open your email. But like, if your salespeople are knocking and they don't know who you are, you're not getting anywhere. And so we did a lot of research on brand and the shortlist and how to make the shortlist. And it really boiled down to, do they know who you are, and do their peers use you? And it was like as simple as that. And so now this year, we're really focusing on search and that discoverability. And so we kind of come up with these themes, and it's all driven by the market and like what's going on and what's being talked about. And then, okay, great. Like, how do we survey buyers and vendors that we work with? And we have these huge communities. What are the questions that we want asked? Let's get all of that proprietary data. Let's synthesize it and create these reports. And these reports are amazing because, to your point, like, you can't copy these reports because it's all this really amazing data that we put out into the market, and we slice and dice it. And, you know, any good marketer makes 20 pieces of content out of it, but it feeds our marketing. It feeds our go-to-market. It also feeds our product strategy. So it's a huge component for our whole corporate strategy, is looking at these macro trends that are going on in B2B tech, doing the research around them, coming up with a point of view, building these reports, and then kind of running with that really from across the business.
That's so cool. It's such a secret weapon for you all to have that data. It's fascinating. You know, we ask about content, but like that it also informs product strategy. Like, man, what a killer like opportunity for you all there. And I love that you're not saying, this is what we want to tell the market, let's go find the data to prove it. You're saying, let's let the market tell us what they're interested in, and we'll go find the data to validate it or invalidate it. I think that's really key. I know a lot of times people will have a message or a story they want to take to market and then manipulate, and maybe not even nefariously, but you can find the data to support the story that you want. But I love that you all are letting the market lead the way on the content you're creating. Really powerful stuff there.
Well, it makes it more interesting, right? Going back to like the sniff test around 5-star reviews, there's reports out there, it doesn't pass the sniff test.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, maybe the last topic here. I think we are going to get through all of them, which is awesome. I appreciate you kind of letting me bounce around here. The CMO role. You're relatively new to the role. If LinkedIn isn't lying to me, looks like you've had some roles in marketing in content. I'm so curious, kind of as you've progressed through your marketing career and now you sit in the CMO seat, has that seat changed your perspective on the value of content marketing at all?
If anything, it's made it more and more important. Everything starts with content. If you don't have content, you have nothing, right? And so when I started at TrustRadius, I was really brought on to kind of rebuild the whole marketing department. And they hadn't had a leader in seat for like 6 months or something along those lines. So they're like, okay. I'm like, great. Where's the content?
Oh, yikes. Yikes.
And having that kind of content background and strategy, I also had a field marketing background. And so it was really interesting to come in and being like, okay, I have a blank slate. Like, where do you start? And then like going back to this like report and this data, I realized that, oh my God, we have this in-house research department. I remember being in ad tech and paying Forrester like $40,000 for this stupid report. And then they were going to try to charge me another $20,000 every year after that. And I was just like we can do this ourselves. Like, this is amazing. Like, most marketers don't have what we have at TrustRadius. I'm like, we're sitting on a gold mine. Like, this will feed our entire marketing strategy, all of our messaging and positioning, like from a product marketing perspective. Like, this is huge. And so I just saw like so much potential when it came to content. And I think that, again, kind of going back to this like concept of the commoditization of content with AI, people are like, oh, great. Like, I can press the easy button and it, you know, it's going to create all this content for me. And I don't actually think that that's going to be like the saving grace for marketers. I think there's a ton of other use cases, especially around data, especially around how and when you reach out to people and you engage them. Like, that's going to be more of, I think, the exciting use cases for AI. And that's already starting to like pop up with a lot of like, you see like the co-pilots and things and how it's managing intent data and some of the messaging too around that. I think those are all like really, really great. Pumping out content, I'm not sold because I think there's a way to do it in a really smart way that you're, again, not just regurgitating what's already out there, but again, going back to that, like the sniff test, if you're just regurgitating content. So I think as a CMO, I really push that with my team. I really push a lot of creativity. I always laugh and I'm like, I'm not really like that creative where I'm coming up with like content ideas. I know that's horrible to say as a marketer and, you know, I probably shouldn't, but it's true. And my team is like so creative. And I'm more the person like, great, let's take this idea, let's execute. Like I'm like, done is better than perfect. And I'm just a very like get it done type person. And so I love my team to like ID and they have all these great ideas. I'm like, great, let's do it. Let's pick one. Okay, great. We're going to do that this quarter. Let's see how it goes. And they've created like some really cool content. Like we created one campaign that's like ongoing is we have this reviews after dark. And we talk about all the like funny, like fraudulent reviews that we get. And they're just like, you know, they're all kind of random. And then like we also like feature some of our customers that are doing like really great like review gen, like they're following the best practices, they're getting those unbiased reviews, and then they actually know how to like use the content. So we created this whole like reviews after dark. Love it. It's amazing. It performs really well. We do these Sunday shout outs where we go through and any kind of like new reviews that we get for vendors, we'll create like these social posts and cards, like just celebrating them. And then we tag that company. If they're a customer, we tag like our POCs and stuff in the social post and like, look how great this is. And it's like simple stuff like that. But like, I'm like, great, let's do it. And it's all content and it's all stuff that we have in-house and we're just like repurposing it. And it's really unique to us and it's really authentic to us. It's just really amazing how the team has like taken that philosophy, if you will, and have completely been running with it over the last few years.
So cool. Kudos to you and kudos to your team. It's cool to hear that kind of balance of, you know, you encouraging them to be creative and push themselves and then you kind of balancing that with execution. Okay, what are we going to do with it? I think that's a really healthy balance. What's maybe one thing that surprised you or that you've learned in kind of your first maybe quarter or so in the CMO seat?
I don't know if it was necessarily a surprise or what you realized, but I think for anybody listening that's like, you know, I want to be a CMO one day, or I want to run this marketing team, or I want this job, whatever it is, I think what you have to do and the mentality you have to have is start doing the job. There's a lot of like VPs of marketing out there. I was an SVP. I was like kind of inching my way to this like CMO role. And I just acted like I was in the role before. Like I was going to be the CMO. And I've done that in every role that I've had in my career. And I think that's why I've been able to push myself so much. It's like, I might not have the title, I might not have the salary, I might not have the team, but I want that role. So I'm going to start acting like that. And I'm going to start taking on the projects for that. And I'm going to start putting myself in those situations where I can act like a director, or I can act like that senior manager I want to be, whatever the role is. Start doing it. You don't need the title. You don't need the salary. You don't need the team. And start to find those gaps to insert yourself into the organization, and it'll happen. You'll get there. And I mean, like if I made it to CMO and I was a receptionist at LiveRamp 12 years ago, you can do it.
I can't even add it. That's a mic drop. I can't even add any commentary to that. I think that's such great advice. I really love that. All right, Allyson, we always wrap these conversations. I'm going to put you on the hot seat here. What's an unpopular opinion that you have as it pertains to B2B marketing?
So I did a post a while ago on the CMO kind of CRO role, and it got me a lot of flack. Also, I just did this whole presentation with my CRO on how well we are aligned. But, you know, there's this trend happening where a lot of CMOs are starting to report into like the CRO. And, you know, I'm just not a big fan of that. I think that the CMO actually is a potential better candidate to lead both of those organizations than a CRO. Now, this is a very like, I say this and I know it's super controversial and there's a lot of opinions and there's a lot of caveats. I was like, look, I think really good CMOs that are like the real deal, that are revenue driven and that know how to rally around the sales organization, the CS organization. They know how to talk to the CFO. They know how to talk to the board. You hire like some really good sales leads in there as well. Like, I just don't see why the pendulum doesn't swing the other way, where everyone thinks like, oh yeah, just put marketing under a CRO instead of the other way around. And so it's pretty controversial. And there's a lot, I think, when it comes to, you know, revenue. But I think really, really good marketers that are really thinking and they're revenue driven and those are the metrics that they're talking about, they could totally take on the CRO role as well.
I love it. We asked for controversial. I understand why it's controversial, but it also reminds me of the broader messaging of around like an aligned, like larger, like go-to-market function, right? Like
yes.
Even like still having CS, still having marketing, still having
yes.
sale, like feels very siloed. It's like you just need a good go-to-market leader who can connect all those different teams.
Exactly.
And I love that you called out the relationship with the CFO, right? That's sometimes an underappreciated role of the CMO or just any marketing leadership is having that relationship with the finance team. I think we've all maybe felt that over the last year or two with the macro environment, but I think like even ongoing that needs in good markets, that's such a critical piece of it all. So I think that's a great opinion.
Yep. When I started at TrustRadius, I knew who my best friend was going to be, and it's the CFO.
Smart. Very, very smart. Well, Allyson, if people want to learn more from you or learn more about TrustRadius, what's the best way to do that?
TrustRadius.com. You'll find us one way or another. And then always just feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I try to be as active as possible, and so I'm always happy to talk shop.
Love it. Well, thanks for talking shop with us today. Until next time, cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Content Cocktail Hour powered by Audience Plus. If you want to see more episodes or more resources curated for your role, join us at audienceplus.com. See you next time. Same place. Cheers.